Chapter 15 of the Defiant Agents. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by R.J. Davis. The Defiant Agents by Andre Norton. Chapter 15. They camped another 2 days near the wrecked ship while Manuelito prowled the haunted corridors and cabins in his spacesuit, planning his booby trap. At night he drew diagrams on pieces of bark and discussed the possibility of this or that device, sometimes lapsing into technicalities his companions could not follow. But Travis was well satisfied that Manuelito knew what he was doing. On the morning of the third day, Nolan slipped into their midst. He was dust-grimed, his face gaunt, the signs of hard travel plain to read. Travis handed him the nearest canteen, and they watched him drink sparingly in small sips before he spoke. "They come with the girl." "You had trouble?" asked Jill Lee. The Tartars had moved their camp, which was only wise, since the Reds must have had a line on the other one, and they are now farther to the west. But he wiped his lips with the back of his hand. "Also, we saw your towers, Fox, and that is a place of power. No sign that the Reds are prowling there?" Nolan shook his head. "To my mind, the mist there conceals the towers from aerial view. Only one coming on foot could tell them from the natural crags of the hills." Travis relaxed. Time still granted them a margin of grace. He glanced up to see Nolan smiling faintly. "This maiden, she is akin to the puma of the mountains," he announced. "She has marked Tsoay with her claws until he looks like the ear-clipped yearling fresh from the branding chute." "She is not hurt?" Travis demanded. This time Nolan chuckled openly. "Hurt? No. We had much to do to keep her from hurting us, younger brother. That one is truly, as she claims, a daughter of wolves. And she is also keen-witted, marking a return trail all the way, though she does not know that is as we wish. Did we not pick the easiest way back for just that reason? Yes, she plans to escape." Travis stood up. "Let us finish this quickly." His voice came out on a rough note. This plan had never had his full approval. Now he found it less and less easy to think about taking Kaydessa into the ship, allowing the emotional torment lurking there to work upon her. Yet he knew that the girl would not be hurt, and he had made sure he would be beside her within the globe, sharing with her the horror of the unseen. A rattling of gravel down the narrow valley opening gave warning to those by the campfire. Manuelito had already stowed the spacesuit in hiding. To Kaydessa they must have seemed reverted entirely to savagery. Tsoay came first, an angry raking of 4 parallel scratches down his left cheek. And behind him Buck and Escata shoved the prisoner, urging her on with a show of roughness which did not descend to actual brutality. Her long braids had shaken loose, and a sleeve was torn, leaving one slender arm bare, but none of the fighting spirit had left her. They thrust her out into the circle of waiting men, and she planted her feet firmly apart, glaring at them all indiscriminately until she sighted Travis. Then her anger became hotter and more deadly. "Pig, rooter in the dirt, diseased camel," she shouted at him in English, and then reverted to her own tongue, her voice riding up and down the scale. Her hands were tied behind her back, but there were no bonds on her tongue. "This is one who can speak thunders and shoot lightnings from her mouth," Buck commented in Apache. "Put her well away from the wood, lest she set it aflame." Tsoay held his hands over his ears. "She can deafen a man when she cannot set her mark on him otherwise. Let us speedily get rid of her." Yet for all their jeering comments, their eyes held respect. Often in the past a defiant captive who stood up boldly to his captors, had received more consideration than usual from Apache warriors. Courage was a quality they prized. A Pindalicki such as Tom Jeffords, who rode into Cochise's camp and sat in the midst of his sworn enemies for a parley, won the friendship of the very chief he had been fighting. Kaydessa had more influence with her captors than she could dream of holding. Now it was time for Travis to play his part. He caught the girl's shoulder and pushed her before him toward the wreck. Some of the spirit seemed to have left her thin, tense body, and she went without any more fight. Only when they came into full view of the ship did she falter. Travis heard her breathe a gasp of surprise. As they had planned, four of the Apaches, Jill Lee, Taché, Nolan, and Buck, fanned out toward the heights above the ship. Manuelito had already gone to cover, to don the spacesuit and prepare for any accident. Resolutely, Travis continued to propel Kaydessa ahead. At the moment he did not know which was worse, to enter the ship expecting the fear to strike or to meet it unprepared. He was ready to refuse to enter, not to allow the girl, sullenly plodding on under his compulsion to face that unseen but potent danger. Only the memory of the towers and the threat of the Reds finding and exploiting the treasure there kept him going. Eskelta went first, climbing to the tear. Travis cut the ropes binding Kaydessa's wrist and gave her a slight slap between the shoulders. "Climb, woman." His anxiety made that a harsh order, and she climbed. Eskelta was inside now, heading for the cabin which might reasonably be selected as a prison. They planned to get the girl as far as that point and then stage their act of being overcome by fear, allowing her to escape. Stage an act? Travis was not 2 feet along that corridor before he knew that there would be little acting needed on his part. The thing which pervaded the ship did not attack sharply, rather it seeped into his mind and body as if he drew in poison with every breath, sent it racing along his veins with every beat of a laboring heart. Yet he could not put any name to his feelings, except an awful, weakening fear which weighted him heavier with every step he took. Kaydessa screamed, not this time in rage, but with such fear that Travis lost his hold, staggered back to the wall. She whirled about, her face contorted, and sprang at him. It was indeed like trying to fight a wildcat, and after the first second or two he was hard put to protect his eyes, his face, his side, without injuring her in return. She scrambled over him, running for the break in the wall, and disappeared. Travis gasped and started to crawl for the break. Eskelta loomed over him, pulling him up in haste. They reached the opening but did not climb through. Travis was uncertain as to whether he could make that descent yet, and Eskelta was obeying orders in not venturing out too soon. Below, the ground was bare. There was no sign of the Apaches, though they were in hiding there, and none of Kaydessa. Travis was amazed that she had vanished so quickly. Still uneasy from the emulation within, they perched within the shadow of the break until Travis thought that the fugitive had a good 5-minute start. Then he nodded a signal to Eskelta. By the time they reached ground level, Travis felt a warm wetness spreading under his shielding palm, and he knew the wound had opened. He spoke a word or two in hot protest against that mishap, knowing it would keep him from the trail. Kaydessa must be covered all the way back across the pass, not only to be shepherded away from her people and toward the plains where she could be picked up by a Red patrol, but also to keep her from danger. And he had planned from the first to be one of those shepherds. Now he was about as much use as a trail lame pony. However, he could send deputies. He thought out his call. A Nailikiyu's head appeared in a frame of brush. "Go, both of you, and run with her. Guard." He said the words in a whisper. fought them with a fierce intensity as he centered his gaze on the yellow eyes in the pointed coyote face.